Anthony Grassi for D2 Ticker here at the Women Leaders in Sports National Convention. Happy to sit down for another small college conversation with Dr. Bren Stevens, Vice President, Director of Athletics at the University of Charleston. Dr. Stevens, thank you for sitting down with me.
Yes, thanks, Anthony. I'm glad to be here with you.
So I want to start with, you are in year 32 at Charleston.
Now, just say I look good for my age, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
That's it, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Just making
You
sure
look
we're on the
32,
same page.
not 32 years.
All right, thank you.
Dozen years as the AD, you competed at Charleston. I'm curious, I want to start kind of, how would you define your leadership style now, and how has that changed over your time at Charleston?
Yeah, I would say my leadership style today is just empowerment, right? I really believe in empowering the people that work for you. And if you do that, I believe the power comes back to you tenfold. So it's just really being open and empowering people to do their work. I try to hire great people that make me look good. I don't have to work quite so hard. and you know, in the end, I really believe that it is about, you know, allowing them to do their work, allowing them to sometimes make mistakes. That's okay. I made a ton on my way up. They always love to hear when I messed up. So I like to, add those into stories when I'm talking with our staff. But, mainly is just, allowing them to be themselves, bring their whole selves to work, and, just really enjoying working at Charleston.
Some of those moments that I imagine they love to hear about. As you think about maybe some of the inflection points throughout your career that maybe made you change or think about, maybe I need to approach this a little bit differently. What were some of those moments throughout your career, either as a coach or an administrator?
Yeah, I have a super intense personality, right? So I've had to learn, I guess, the biggest thing to pivot, right? I think intensity in coaching, you can see some of that, and that's okay. But as an administrator, I've tried to really make sure that I reel that back a little bit, just so that folks are not feeling like, you're always on the attack, right? So I get passionate about something, the hands get flying, I get, really into talking about it. And not everyone has that same kind of energy, right? So I don't want to put everyone on their heels. So sometimes I've had to learn to, pivot a little bit, manage that intensity. But I still want to be myself, right? And so I'm passionate about sports. I'm passionate about, watching women and minorities have those opportunities, and, just providing them with a chance to, get into the AD chair one day, maybe.
As you talk about that passion, that commitment, that confidence that you walk around with, was there a moment, either as a coach or as you've gone through as an administrator, as you sit in the AD chair, where you're like, or you maybe questioned whether you could do something, or you questioned you were the right fit for something, as someone who oftentimes maybe feels that about themselves in various capacities, and how did you maybe work through that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Anthony. I think one of the hardest things for me to pivot from was that first year or two in the AD chair. Like, I felt like I was ready. I had been on a lot of different committees, throughout my career, and I felt like I had the knowledge, but I really was struggling with missing being around the student athletes. And so I was trying to figure out in that first year, a lot of times, did I make the right decision? Maybe I should have just stayed in coaching throughout my entire career. And then, I thought, no, I really believe I have something to add. I believe I have some value that I can add in the AD chair, and I can really help lead our coaches. So I'm very passionate about, providing them with lots of different opportunities outside of the X's and O's of their game, but different professional development opportunities, so to speak. But yeah, I struggled a little bit, and every time I'd walk by, the volleyball court, or, where I had coached for a long time, it was really hard. I'd have to go home and mow the yard. I'd mow it a couple of times, sometimes 3 times, just so I could, just use up that energy, because I was like, dag, I miss being out there. But what I really missed was that day-to-day interaction that you get with the student athletes. You have to really be intentional as an AD to get anywhere near that same type of experience.
Those first few years where you're really itching to get back out there, what were you just going out to practice every day? Were you kind of more intentional about traveling to games? Were you more intentional to kind of be around where the student athletes are, in the cafeteria, walking around campus? What were kind of the intentional steps that you took to scratch that itch?
Yeah, so I try to never miss a home event. So throughout the year, we will have somewhere between 160 to 180 events. I'm not going to go and stay for the entire baseball game, because that lasts for probably 4 or 5 hours. That sport never stops. But I'll go for an hour, hour and a half, and just get a chance to be around my coaches, get a chance to be around the student athletes and see what they're doing and listen to them and just get to take in some great Division II athletics. So if I'm at home, unless I have a meeting or something that I absolutely have to be at, I'm going to try to be out at one of our activities. And that takes a lot of stamina. It takes, a lot of energy to be out there, but it also feeds me in terms of the student athletes know that I love them.
Is there an additional forum through which, maybe it's through SAC or through just kind of the conversation that you're having as you're passing them by, that to try to get that feedback? And is there a way in which you're like dissecting that and indexing that so you can try to keep track of all the feedback that you're getting from student athletes?
Yeah, I think that's good. There's nothing, I'm not doing anything formally, but just, as I talk with our coaches and, they're in and out my office all the time. I try to keep, that door open all the time as much as possible. And so they'll stop in and it means a lot. You would be surprised how much it means to your head coaches and assistant coaches when you show up, whether it's to a practice or to a game. I don't spend as much time at practices, but I really try to be at their contests. And they'll come in and they go, hey, I know you're really busy, but I really appreciate that you were there. That was a big game for us. And so when we'll talk about different student athletes and things that happen throughout the game, and I think they know that you're invested in them. Now I don't have a family, and so it's easier for me. I know not every person can spend that same amount of time, but I think you still have to invest some time in that.
How do you think about your development as an AD, both as the individual and sitting in the chair?
Yeah, I think my development, being on a lot of committees, I'm also an avid reader. I do like to listen to podcasts too as well, and I try to just constantly, as far as the emotional intelligence skill of, self-actualization goes, I think we have a due diligence to always be trying to improve ourselves. And so I think that's helped me, to just listen to different perspectives. I like to hire, like my senior associate AD, we think very differently. Like I am definitely one of those half glass full people, and I think we can do everything. And Todd, my senior associate athletic director, is more the half glass empty, more of a realistic guy. But, we just really gel. And, he'll be like, Bren, maybe we don't need to do 16 new things. We're already doing a ton of stuff. And, I need to hear that every now and then. So that's good.
Do you have a process that you've put in place to make those improvements? Because personally, for what we do, we've changed how we're thinking about our quote-unquote operating system. Mm-hmm. I'm curious if you as an AD have thought or have a formal process to, whether it's on a quarter basis or a semester basis or a yearly basis or a monthly basis, and how you're structuring that with each member of your staff, whoever's kind of responsible for that initiative. How are you thinking about making those improvements over time?
Yeah, that's part of, people like to talk about their strategic plans, but I do think that is an important piece, right? And probably one of the biggest questions I ask my senior staff a lot is, what can we stop doing? Because we're so good at doing, right? We're so good at adding things and, let's try this, okay, now, NIL is big. What are we going to do in that space? But what are we taking off our plate? Because Anthony, you live in this world, you know how much it's changed and how quickly it changes. And are we able to think about what's the space going to look like as an administrator and what's going to look like for our student athletes 3 years from now, 5 years from now? And a lot is dependent on what we're seeing at the Division I level. So trying to think through that and making sure that we're, at least as much as we can, trying to stay ahead of things.
You mentioned kind of having a yin-yang relationship with some of your administrators, may have a different perspective.
Right.
A lot of your administrators have been there for a while.
They have.
And how beneficial is it to have that longevity with someone? And on the other side, kind of how are you keeping the relationship with each of those individuals, but also their development as administrators fresh? Because they've been, I was looking at, I think, the vast majority of your senior staff has been at UC or has some ties to UC for a significant amount of time.
Yeah, I've been really lucky to keep them. I don't know how I've done that, but no, I think that's a great question, and they also all bring different viewpoints to things, and so as I listen to them, I'm curious as to what they have to say, and it's not always the same as how I think about things, and I know I have a lens, right? So one of my core values is fairness, and so I look at through many different things that we do, are we making sure that that is a fair process for everybody? And sometimes I can get stuck in that window of fairness, right? And so whether it's Todd, who's been at UC for about 25 years, and Sherry's Reed, who's our senior woman administrator, who's been there, for more than that, I think 26 or 27 years. But they're also very open-minded, and we really do dig into what we're doing and how we're doing things.
I imagine the senior staff meetings you guys have are very exciting or interesting.
We do, and we really have great respect for one another, and so I feel really blessed to have them around. And I brought one of my probably the youngest in terms of experience, Jenna Thedeen, with me this weekend, and she oversees the academic pieces for our department, and she's an assistant AD for recruitment and retention, and so this is her first trip to Women Leaders, so I wanted to make sure that she had that opportunity to also, continue her growth and to see what this is all about.
Speaking of professional development, we were talking beforehand about how much of an emphasis you place on it for your staff. If I recall, you were doing, as of maybe a couple years ago at this point, we're doing 16 sessions a year with everybody on your staff?
Yes.
Is that still the process, and how has maybe it updated in the last couple years, if at all?
No, that's still it. I think it's, we have 8 sessions for our head coaches and another 8 for our assistant coaches, graduate assistants, and if there's any volunteer coaches or that would like to attend, they're allowed to attend. And we go through a whole host of topics, but I focus a lot on emotional intelligence. I'm a certified emotional intelligence clinician, so, and that being a big part of my background. So I actually just did a session last week with our head coaches and had them do assessments, so I'll be getting those back in a few days, and I'll use those, right, as I meet with them. Again, I'm not going to help any coach with the X's and O's. I mean, maybe could help our volleyball coach, but I would never do that, right, because I don't do that for the other coaches. So, I step back and let them coach and watch, it's fun just to see what they're doing. But as part of that, the emotional intelligence is helping them to look at, okay, here's areas where I'm really strong in. Here's some areas where maybe I'm not quite as strong. And I'll say to them, what do you want to work on? Because I want to help you with that. And I think if you're not having those kinds of conversations, you're really missing out. Because at the end of the day, I want them, when they're ready to go on to whatever that next job is going to be, I want to make sure I have more than prepared them for that.
How would you define the culture of UC Athletics?
Yeah, that's a great question, because we do talk about culture a lot.
We do. It's like one of the buzzwords.
Yeah, it is. And I think if you're asking me what do I really want to create, and I think we have created it, but it can always be better, is I want every coach to feel like they can bring their whole selves to work, Earlier in my career as a gay, female coach and then later administrator, I was embarrassed and scared to bring, my full self, or to have my partner come with me to a game. And so I hid in the shadows a bit. And I thought, as an administrator, I want to make sure that I'm never doing that. Like, I'm making sure that everyone feels like, they can be who they are when they come to work. They don't have to put a mask on. I want them to be their authentic selves. And what's really great about that is if you come up to our main floor where most of the coaches are at, you'll see in the evenings, kids running up and down the floor, and, wives there and husbands, and just people, hey, if that's the only time they can get dinner together. Our football coaches come back after practice in the fall. They may have dinner with their families upstairs, and then they're going to go watch film. And so if they get an hour with their family time right there on campus, that's what I want it to look like. It looks a little chaotic, because people are running around, but we also want to make sure that it really feels open. And so I think they would say that we've, accomplished that, but it can always be better, right?
It's interesting that you said the culture is allowing people to be their full self. And that has nothing to do with the on-field, the competitive success or not success of the department.
Mm-hmm.
How does that strike you? As somebody, as a department that's had a lot of success,
Right.
you know, we were talking earlier, you've won all but 2 Mountain East Conference Commissioners Cups. You're not short on success. How do you think about how you would define the culture versus the success that it has created?
Yeah, I think it's about getting those great people, right, in the right positions. And so early in my career, you know, when I first became the AD, I was looking more as I'm hiring folks, looking at, okay, do they have Division I experience? Are they a top-notch Division I assistant? And now when I hire, I'm going, is this going to be someone I want to work with? Is this going to be someone that our staff is going to want to hang out with and work with? And are they going to be someone that's going to really add to the synergy of our department? And if it's not, then I'm probably not going to hire them. And so, we do a lot of in-depth analysis when we're hiring someone. Like, we're going behind the scenes and talking to, okay, not just the AD from that school, but, you know, my soccer coach has been around for a while. He may know their soccer coach. And, you know, how do you really find out what is that person like to work with? And are they going to be someone that is, hey, when we get to host, I don't even know how many NCAA events we hosted last year, but it was a lot. When we get a chance to host, Anthony, we want to make sure that, you know, we're doing a great job, but I can't do it myself. I need lots of people to buy in sports that maybe are not in season, and it's just going to be someone that's going to come in and be willing to do that. And when we found those people, and I think they've helped us to be really successful.
Are there other elements of, you know, evaluating coaches before, like when you're making a hire, that you're thinking about? Especially, you mentioned your, you know, awareness of emotional intelligence, and you're constantly focused on professional development. Are there other elements that maybe your peers may not be thinking about when evaluating a coach or a hire?
Yeah, it's a good question. You know, obviously the EQ is a big piece of what we're talking about. And just, you know, them being able to articulate and communicate well, I think is important, right? I think you have to have, I think to be successful in probably any genre, but especially in the coaching world, right, you have to have that image part where you're going to look the part and dress the part, right? You've got to have that communication piece. Can you really communicate your verbal, nonverbal skills? And the biggest piece is your character. Because when you think about it, people get hired for their communication. Does this person look like a coach? Are they subject matter expertise? Well, what do they get fired for? It's always for character, right? Almost all the time. And so, and you think about how many great athletes we have seen that have fallen because of, like, you look at like a Lance Armstrong. Incredible cyclist, right? But, you know, obviously not the best at the character space. So I think that's the main thing, that when we're talking to folks is we're going to talk about their character and what that's like, and we're going to try to investigate that as much as possible.
Do you have a set rubric, may not be the right word, but that's the word that comes to mind, of how you're trying to evaluate both the character and the emotional intelligence of somebody? Because it's easy I imagine, as an expert in that, you can feel it, but that might be difficult to quantify.
It's true. Yeah, and so without having them take an EQ assessment, right?
Right, and I'm imagine not putting prospective coaches through that.
No, I'm not. But I'm going to ask some questions that I think, like a typical question that I might ask someone, Anthony, would be, okay, tell me about a time when you didn't get it right. Tell me about a time where, you know, you've made a mistake, and what'd you learn from that? But also talk about, you know, what were those feelings like around that? And you can really tell if someone's really true and they've really thought through, like, because we've all made a ton of mistakes, right? Yeah. I don't always get it right. And believe me, there are many times that I didn't get it right. So, but can you articulate that, and can you say, you know, what were you feeling during that moment, and what did you learn from that? And hopefully continue to be like, hey, it's like Maya Angelou's quote, right? You know, when you know better, do better, right? So we make mistakes, but when we know better, we want to do better.
That's really, it's an interesting question to ask, because especially how did you feel about it? Because that's, like you said, the character things are things that more often than not will get people in trouble if there's something that comes out of it. On the professional development side, I'm curious how you think about the young professionals. Like you said, you're kind of a veteran of this convention, a veteran of the D2 ADs. What is, you know, kind of in the landscape that we're in right now with college athletics, would your advice be to those young professionals as they're looking to either take a step into the industry or take the next step in the industry?
Yeah, this last year, I will share this with you, was probably the hardest year that I worked through as an AD, and it was because I lost 8 head coaches, and 6 of those 8 went to Division I institutions. So going to make a lot more money. They felt like it's a more prestigious position, although now I've talked to a few of them that were like, Bren, I'm not sure I should have left. But even as I have spoken with them and trying to help prepare them for that, I feel good about, sometimes I'll be like, I don't like everybody stealing my coaches, but I also, feel good that I know this is a great opportunity for them, right?
That culture of success.
Yeah, and so it's that piece is good, but I also feel like, did I help make sure that they were really ready to think about all the things that they needed to before they made that decision? And, that just involves a lot of one-on-one chats with them. And most of my coaches are very open to that. And we have a lot of discussions around those things. For the younger folks that are just really getting started, I would say to them, make sure that you're just doing your work. And, you got to kind of grind some things out. And, just make sure you're doing your work every day. And most important thing is making sure that you're leaving a great emotional wake on people. So when you leave the room, Anthony, what do people say about you? Hopefully they're not saying, oh, Anthony's this big jerk or whatever. Hopefully they're saying, right. Hopefully they're saying, man, Anthony's like one of the kindest people I've ever met. He just really gets it. He's willing to go out of his way to help. Those are the types of things that I think, we want them to think about. What's that emotional wake when you leave?
That's interesting. On the coaching side, you mentioned making sure they're prepared for their next role. Has that changed how you're having conversations and the relationship you have with your current coaches and those that you've hired to replace those 8 that have left?
Yeah, so I'm excited about the new folks that we have, and actually, to be honest with you, I'm probably going to retire in the next couple of years, right? And so I had actually thought about maybe even last year was going to be my last year, and I've been in a great financial position to be able to retire, but I also felt, wow, 8 new coaches, right? And so I have a due diligence to help them get onboarded properly and to help them find their footing and get through those first seasons. And so maybe they're another year, another 2, I'm not sure. My next thing that I'm looking at, kind of segue here a little bit, is I do a lot of different speaking opportunities, and I do a lot in the emotional and leadership space. And so I'm actually doing some of that part-time on the side right now, and I hope to be able to do a little bit more of it when I fully retire from being an AD.
We for sure look forward to seeing what that looks like. As you think about maybe the succession plan at UC, you've been there for a long time. I imagine your president has a ton of confidence in you and your opinion about who is right for that. Is there a level of, as you think about maybe your exit from the department, whatever that may be,
right,
is the optimal or the kind of the best solution or the best situation to have some transitionary period, especially given that you're a rock there, and it'll be a massive shift, a seismic shift, I imagine, when you leave. Will you kind of seek to have a transition process there so you can kind of explain to somebody who steps in to succeed you, whether they are on campus right now or not? If they're external, they probably need to be watching this video, but so that they can understand what you've done, so that they can then understand the relationships people have with their AD and figure out maybe how what they want to do fits in with the way things are.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I feel like I've already started that transition piece a little bit in terms of making sure that Todd, who is my number 2, I share everything with him, unless it's something a coach has asked me specifically to keep in confidence. But if it's just, our day-to-day things, there's no secrets there. This is the budget. This is how we do things. So he's well aware. I would love to see him be my replacement, but obviously the president's going to decide what he wants to do. When I was up for the AD position, I'll tell this story really quick, but my former president, did not really want me to be the AD, and so I didn't think I was going to get the job at Charleston after being there already for 20-some years, right? And so the student athletes got together and did a petition while I was away at the volleyball coaches convention, and they sent it to the president and had the signature of every student athlete on it that said, we want Bren Stevens to be the next.
Every student athlete?
Every single
one?
Every single one. And I don't know how they did it. I don't even know how they coordinated it. But I came back, and I'm going to tell you this. So I came back from the volleyball coaches convention, and there was this envelope that had been slid under my office door, and I opened it up, and it was that petition. And I mean, Anthony, I cried like a baby.
I can
Like, I
imagine.
mean, I was snotting, crying at the old ugly, the ugly cry thing going on. And it was, sent to the president. We want, Bren Stevens, Dr. Stevens, to be our next AD. And so after that gave me a whole nother level of confidence. And I was like, all right, well, if UC doesn't want me, I'm gonna.
Somebody does.
Hopefully, someone will pick me up, right? I'm hoping. And so, in the end, I did get the position at UC. So whether your president wants to do a national search or not, or if he'll go with Todd, I have no idea. But I will say the one thing that it does give you doing the national search is it gave me that credibility. They brought 5 men to campus. I was the only female candidate, and in the end, I was selected to be the AD. So I tell people, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. And, for me, that's probably, if you ask me, one of the greatest things that have happened to me in my career is that I had a lot of love from our student athletes.
Do you have that petition framed in your office?
No. No.
I can only imagine that would be a staple, just given the feelings that it brings you.
It does.
The feelings it brought me, I was like, oh, that was awesome. Okay, so I'll get you out of here on these last 2. I know it's been going for a little while. You've been on a ton of committees around Division II and college athletics at large. How are you thinking about leading or being a leader in Division II, college athletics, here at One of the Leaders, when you may not have, a position on a high-profile committee?
Yeah.
Or a ton of high-profile committees, maybe is the right way to put it.
Yeah. I was fortunate. I've gotten to be on some great committees throughout the years. So, and that's been my professional development, right? Getting to be around the best of the best. And so, I've been really fortunate in my career. But I would say now, as I've pulled back a little bit, I have the opportunities to still continue to mentor. And so, I work with some great people in Division II. Terry Steve, who is our vice president, right? It's amazing for Division II. Ann Martin, Jill Wilson, they lead the mentoring program for women and minorities. I have been working with them as a person on the Division II Athletic Directors Association, but also as an NCAA 2, AD. And it gives me that opportunity to still, be hands-on and hopefully help mentor some people. And that's really brings me a lot of joy, and that's what I hope to continue as I retire.
So to get you out of here, this last question: what is the biggest challenge you are facing right now? It can be in your role, it can be at UC, it can be personal, your kind of personal career. What's the biggest challenge you're facing right now?
Yeah, I would have said throughout this last year was the staffing piece, right? That was just crazy to lose 8 head coaches in 1 year, and I thought, okay, am I doing something wrong? What's going on here? But I would also say is just really making sure that we're doing a great job of continually to invest in our coaches and our student athletes. And how will we do that with limited funds and, always looking out as to how do we, do more in the places where we need to do more. But to my point earlier about sometimes you might have to stop doing something you were doing to be able to do something new. And I don't know. I've trying to wrap my head around some of the NIL stuff and the transfer portal, but I feel like we'll figure it out as we go.
Bren, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, I so appreciated getting to talk to you and spend some time, and you had great questions. So thank you so much.
Thank you.